If Hawaiians tell us not to come to their home, why do some of you still keep going? Yes, it's beautiful. Love trips. There are a million other places for us to go. Let what's happening right now in Hawaii be another reminder as to why they say we're taking their resources. There are thousands of tourists being flown and relocated to different islands. Meanwhile, Native Hawaiians are dying, all because you want to travel there and go to a beach and flick up? Please be serious.
Hi lovelies, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Belinda Stranad and here is Belinda Morris. Don't forget to please subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so that anytime I upload video, you will be the first person to be notified. To my returning subscribers, to those people that share my videos, leave commentaries and also educate each and every one of us. You guys are the real MVP. So lovelies, let's dive in today's videos and we're just going to come back to talk about it.
Okay, here's another question about Hawaii. I feel like we are part of Asia, not literally.
We're more part of Asia than we are America.
Right. I feel like this is very Asian culture. And so many people who are locals can either understand or identify with other Asian cultures, even down to how we like run ohana. It's like so familial because like Chinese people, Japanese people, like filial piety is such a thing to honor like the kupuna and to take care of them afterwards is such a thing that we do here. Do you feel like we are Asia? Like we are considered a part of Asia?
I feel like we have more similarities to everyone else, not just indigenous cultures, than mainland Americans. Our culture is so much more related to Asians, Mexicans, even African Americans.
You know, you blame it on the white man on how we came over and take your land. This is America, you know.
Let me just say something to this call. This is not America. This is Polynesia. Our country was stolen. That's one of your problems. You're ignorant, woefully ignorant. But you, caller, need to learn about Hawaiian history and about where you are. You think you are in America. You are not in America. You are in a colony that is in Polynesia that was forcibly taken, just as, I might add, all of Eastern Europe was forcibly taken by the Soviet Union, which Americans think is a very, very bad place. The bad, bad Soviet Union. Well, the bad, bad United States of America took Puerto Rico, it took Alaska, it stole Indian land, it took Hawaii, it took Guam, it took Micronesia, Palau, and you had better learn that history because you are the recipient of an imperialist tradition.
I can't believe some of you genuinely think Hawaii is part of the U.S.
Huh?
Telling me an island in the middle of the ocean is part of the United States?
Okay, so even though Hawaii is an island in the middle of the ocean, it is absolutely a part of the United States. Alaska also is not attached to the lower 48, but it's still a state. As a matter of fact, it was made a state August 21st, 1959. Don't you guys have like a big party on July 7th to celebrate your state day or something like that? This is the state flag of Hawaii, because it's a state. But yes, there are 50 states: Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Wyoming. 50. Hawaii is number 50. See? 50. United States has 50 states. Hawaii is a state. Hawaii is definitely a state of the United States.
If you claim you had a bad time visiting Hawaii and that the locals were unwelcoming and rude to you, first of all, just say Hawaiians instead of locals because we know who you really mean. And secondly, perhaps you did something to warrant that response because until you live in a place where around 20,000 tourists fly in every single day, 9 to 10 million a year, and there are 7 tourists to every resident, and you have to deal with these tourists and all of their personalities every day, many of them with no home training, and they treat Hawaii like a playground or Disneyland, disrespect the rules and customs, and expect the people here to bow down and serve them head to toe, you will never understand why our patience for tourists start low and any little thing can set us off. This is our home. We live here every day, work multiple jobs, raise families, all for the state to prioritize tourism and wealthy land developers and give us scraps. It is 2025, and you should all know by now that tourism money goes to tourism industries and doesn't actually help the local community. If tourism was really important to us, why don't you see Hawaiian-owned hotels and resorts? Why are local businesses shutting down? How come the median price of a single-family home is $1 million? So unless you're here to actually learn about our culture or do something meaningful for us and help our community, go home, Haole. Who said that?
How do you feel about tourists coming to Hawaii?
Tourists coming to Hawaii are not an issue. Tourists whom are entitled to do and whatever they please and act in whatever way they please without consciousness and without cognizance that they're in somebody else's home. That as much as we are a vacation backdrop to people, there's got to be something said for being conscious. When visitors come to Hawaii, it's as if we're not only their playground, but we're their shithole or their glory hole to do whatever the hell they want and to make like whatever they want. And that comes directly from being a part of the United States of America. American tourists think that because this is America, they can do whatever the fuck they want. Being American focuses on individual personal liberties and freedoms. Being Pacific Islander and even being Asian, we focus on a culture of we. We is greater than me. We think about what happens to a place after we come, utilize it, and if we trash it, the next person can't enjoy it. So it's our responsibility to pick up after ourselves. You know, that's not American mentality. American mentality is, go ahead, use it, and, well, if it gets screwed up, we'll just figure out how to mitigate it in the end.
Is it racist to say that it annoys me when people say Hawaii the right way?
Yes, it is, and here are the reasons why. 1, you are ignoring the Okina in the word Hawaii, which is part of the Hawaiian language. After the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom, the Hawaiian language was banned in schools and systematically suppressed by American colonizers. So people, both Hawaiian and non-Hawaiian, wanting to reclaim the correct pronunciation is part of a broader movement of cultural revitalization and resistance to colonization. You being annoyed at people wanting to say Hawaii correctly just reflects the expectation that our language and culture should be simplified, mispronounced, or erased for your white comfort. I don't know, maybe at best you're just insecure because you think you don't have a place at the table to say Hawaii correctly, which you absolutely do. Everyone else does. You can say Hawaii or you can say Hawaii. Or at worst, you really are racist because you think respecting other people's cultures and languages is just too much for you. Hawaii is not an English word. Saying Hawaii or Hawaii is grating to our ears.
Lisa over here says that she's going to take her money and go to other islands. She's going to go to Tahiti because the Hawaiians are being too mean. We're just too uppity.
Who's going to tell her that Tahitians feel the exact same way, as do other Pacific Islanders? Because we all have histories of colonization, settler and military occupation, over-tourism, cultural appropriation. Entitled howlers like Lisa who think that their presence on our islands is doing us a favor, who only see our homes as vacation spots, our cultures as their commodities, and our people as their servants. Lisa came to Hawaii and was surprised that the native Hawaiians and the local people actually had lives and personalities. We're not here to make sure that her vacation is so perfect for her and that she is centered the entire time. And all because I, a native Hawaiian woman and a hula dancer, dared to point out that haules are butchering our hula, and especially I'm seeing so many videos on TikTok of haules trying to attempt the hula from Lilo and Stitch and just doing whatever. Lisa needs to interrogate me. Yes, I've traveled the world and I would love to travel more. I think traveling is fun. I don't try to dance other countries' cultural dances, especially if I don't know them, if I've never taken a class before. If I wanted to do that, I would probably try to take a class and maybe talk with the instructor there and see what is the most respectful way to approach it. Because that shows I actually care about their culture and their customs, right? The third question I don't understand, because I wasn't even talking about authentic accents or pronunciation or ordering meals. Maybe Lisa's projecting, I don't know. And I also don't understand the fourth question because I wasn't talking about knowing the customs of places you're visiting. I do think it's important to know the place that you're traveling to. What are the local laws and expectations? You know, again, if you want to visit somewhere with respect, with the intention of wanting to respect and actually immerse yourself in the culture, in the community. But something tells me that Lisa doesn't give a fuck about that. And before I was even given a chance to answer these questions, yeah, didn't think so. It's a lot of fragility happening here. And again, just from me pointing out, like, there are a lot of howlers on this app butchering our hula, and that's not respectful. For some reason, you're trying to justify that it is by, like, asking weird, irrelevant questions. This is just something I will never understand when not just Hawaiians, but, like, any indigenous person or anyone of non-palm colored cultures, like, ask people to just respect their cultures, learn it properly, learn it authentically. Haole is just like, oh my god, you're offending me! Like, chill. But yeah, good luck at Tahiti. Definitely do what you were doing here in Hawaii, and, you know, I would be shocked if you get the same response there.
Hawaiians feel about black people. I am one Hawaiian with one Hawaiian opinion. I do not represent all Hawaiians. I'm also a Hawaiian that's not from Hawaii, so please keep that in mind. If you're looking at racism from the power structure, Hawaiians have very limited power even in their own islands. Likelihood of them being able to even be racist is unlikely because they have limited power, and racism is about power structures. I went to go visit recently, stay with my uncle, had my son. My uncle pulls me to the side, says, oh babe, I just want to say, it's okay. What's okay, uncle? Your son, what about him? Well, you know that he's black. I was not offended because my uncle was trying to explain to me that no matter what my son was, that he still loved my son and he still loved me. Now, why would my uncle feel some kind of way about my son being black? I've always said it's because Hawaiians have very limited experience with black people, and specifically black people mainland style. It's one thing to, like, exist with black people. It's something else to be in black spaces. There are not a lot of black spaces in Hawaii. There may be black people in Hawaiian spaces or in spaces in Hawaii, but there are not a lot of black spaces. And because Hawaiians don't keep proximity with black people in black spaces, they don't experience black people except for what they see on TV, hear in music, see in movies, on social media. It's one thing to have black friends, have black cousins, that's a different experience. But living in a black space in Hawaii is unlikely. What you will never get me to say other than anything is that Hawaiians are the most loving, kind, sweet, aloha people. So they're more than likely going to give you the benefit of the doubt, welcome you in, feed you, as long as you treat them with kindness and respect. That's generally how it goes. The only racist Hawaiians that I've ever encountered were mainland Hawaiians who tried to assimilate, who have lived and existed in white spaces and have had to do whatever it is they think they have to do to fit in to the power structure. I've never heard a racial slur, like, directed towards black people anytime I've ever been in Hawaii. Ever. So, they don't say things like that.
How do Hawaii discovered? It was stolen. And everything you think you know about how it became part of the United States is a lie dressed up in leis and tourism brochures. Let's start with the fact that Hawaii was a sovereign nation. It had a constitution, international treaties, and recognition from world powers. By the mid-1800s, the Hawaii Kingdom had embassies in London and Paris. It wasn't just some remote island. It was a global player with its own monarchy and its own government. Then American business interests showed up. White sugar barons, mostly descendants of missionaries. They came for the land and they didn't want to play by Hawaii's rules. So what did they do? They staged a coup with help from the U.S. Marines. In 1983, Queen Leleokalani was overthrown. She was trying to restore power to Native Hawaiians after years of political manipulation. So white settlers, backed by the U.S. military, forced her to surrender at gunpoint, and then had the nerve to call themselves a provisional government. It wasn't provisional, it was a takeover. And she didn't go quietly. Leleokalani wrote petitions, made speeches, and begged U.S. leadership to intervene and undo the coup. Over 38,000 Native Hawaiians signed in protest. But America didn't care, because by then the sugar was flowing, and soon, Pearl Harbor became a military asset. In 1898, the U.S. illegally annexed Hawaii through a joint resolution, not a treaty, which it actually needed under international law. that annexation was never agreed to by the Hawaiian people. They were occupied, plain and simple, and what followed was decades of cultural suppression. The Hawaiian language was banned in schools. Sacred lands were seized. Children were punished for speaking the language of their ancestors. A nation was turned into a theme park. And now, Hawaii is marketed as a paradise. But Native Hawaiians are being priced off their own land, watching million-dollar condos go up on stolen beaches. And the same government that occupied their kingdom still hasn't admitted it was wrong. So no, Hawaii wasn't added to the U.S. It was taken. At gunpoint. Its queen was imprisoned. Its language was criminalized. Its people were silenced. And the only reason most Americans don't know that is because the truth doesn't sell hotel rooms. Hawaii wasn't discovered.
The United States government believes that Hawaii legally belongs to them. Delusional. Let's go back to the beginning. In the 1820s, after a couple decades of sending missionaries to scan their greedy eyes over the islands, the United States decided that Hawaii had fertile land and a thriving population with a deep understanding of this Aina. This led the United States to do what the United States does best, getting FOMO from not understanding the relationship to resources, inviting themselves to participation, creating exclusionary rules, and then monopolizing the space. These missionaries began opening businesses and claiming land, seeing the space as a business venture. And after about 70 years of profiting off of not their land, they had rewritten a constitution, labeled themselves as the provisional, referred to Hawaii as, quote, a fully ripe pear and its golden hour for the U.S. to pluck it. By the time the late 1800s came around, the United States had a feral need to take what wasn't theirs, launched a massive narrative war, crying wolf to U.S. citizens that there was a war in Hawaii, so that the U.S. would willingly send troops in support. After essentially creating this alibi for the violence they were about to inflict, the U.S. launched their invasion of Hawaii and overthrew the Hawaiian Kingdom on January 17, 1893. Her Majesty Queen Liliuokalani yielded her authority to avoid bloodshed, trusting that the United States would recognize the illegality of the actions taken by the provisional government and restore her to power. Her Majesty wrote to President Grover Cleveland, appealing for assistance in restoring her rightful place to the throne and for the United States to stay out of Hawaiian business. I, Liliuokalani, by the grace of God and under the Constitution of the Hawaiian Kingdom, Queen, do hereby solemnly protest against any and all acts done against myself and the constitutional government of the Hawaiian Kingdom by certain persons claiming to have established a provisional government of and for this kingdom. That I yield to the superior force of the United States of America, whose Minister Plenipotentiary, His Excellency John L. Stevens, has caused United States troops to be landed at Honolulu and declared that he would support the said provisional government. Now, to avoid any collision of armed forces and perhaps the loss of life, I do, under this protest and impelled by said forces, yield my authority until such time as the government of the United States shall, upon the facts being presented to it, undo the action of its representative and reinstate me in the authority which I claim as the constitutional sovereign of the Hawaiian Islands, done at Honolulu this 17th day of January, AD 1893. Surprisingly, Cleveland used his presidential brain cell of the month and paused the annexation attempt and condemned the overthrow. He sent U.S. Special Commissioner James Blount to conduct an investigation on the overthrow, and the results of the Blount report concluded that the overthrow had been illegal and that the U.S. Minister to Hawaii, John L. Stevens, remember him, had acted improperly by supporting the coup with the landing of U.S. Marines. Sounds good, right? No. Lauren Thurston and Sanford Dole, who were the descendants of the first missionaries to Hawaii, refused to accept this. They said, okay, while national governments are negotiating, let's just lie to get our way. And unfortunately, following a failed counter-revolutionary attempt by her supporters to restore the monarchy, Queen Liliuokalani was arrested, tried by a military tribunal, imprisoned in the Iolani Palace, her home, for nearly 8 months. She was then placed under house arrest at her residence, Washington Palace, for a further 5 months. She was sealed off from any outside communication, any visitors, and under complete control of the United States. This was their version of graciousness, because you see, they originally sentenced her to 5 years in prison under their own
made up legal system. This is like me walking into your hale and using my own house rules while putting you in timeout. After the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom, they forced Americanization through public schools and banned the teaching and speaking of Olelo Hawaii and created a public school board who ultimately believed, quote, if we are ever to have peace and annexation, the first thing to do is obliterate the past. This went on for generations, from the late 1800s to the late 1950s. My great-great-grandparents and their children, their children's children, and so forth weren't allowed to speak Olelo Hawaii and weren't allowed to pass it down to our family. I am the first and only member of my family that is relearning our mother tongue because I couldn't learn it from my family. Because of these internal and external pressures, Hawaii was officially annexed in 1898. And despite over 21,000 signatures in the Ku'e petitions from citizens across Kapai Ainaho, Hawaii, including my great-great-grandparents, Hawaii still became a U.S. territory. Funnily enough, though, this is what we mean by illegal occupation. This was done by a joint resolution of the U.S. House and Senate. And joint resolutions are only domestic. They cannot be applied internationally. So even now, the United States has no actual legal authority over the Kingdom of Hawaii. Even the United Nations recognizes the US's strange occupation in Hawaii over the last 150 years. But as we've been taught, Hawaii ultimately became a US state in 1959 after decades of dehumanization and militarizations. Hawaiians signed a
Hawaii was never given, it was never gracefully integrated, it was never peacefully welcomed into the United States. It was taken violently, strategically, and desperately. And everything most Americans think they know about Hawaii, paradise, beaches, less tourism, is a carefully constructed mask meant to hide the truth of a stolen nation. A sovereign kingdom that existed with its own government, its own constitution, and its own international relationships long before the United States decided it wanted the islands for itself. So let's talk about what actually happened, because the real story of Hawaii isn't taught in schools, it isn't told in tourism brochure, it isn't mentioned when airlines drop you off with a plastic lane and a welcome drink. The real story is one of overthrown occupation, cultural erasure, and resistance that continues this very day. Hawaii was a sovereign kingdom recognized around the world. By the mid-80s, the Hawaii Kingdom had embassies in London, Paris, and Washington, D.C. It has treaties with major nations. It was a global player, not a helpless island group waiting to be rescued or civilized. Hawaiians had literacy rates higher than the United States. They had a functioning government with checks and balances. They had a royal family, a constitution, and a thriving culture. But what they also had, rich land, strategic location, and an economy that American businessmen wanted to control. And that is where the trouble began. American descendants of missionaries, known as sugar barons, began gaining wealth in Hawaii. They wanted full control of Hawaiian land and Hawaiian laws, but as long as native Hawaiians held political power, they couldn't do that. So these white businessmen did what colonizers always do when they want land that isn't theirs. They created instability, manipulated politics, and prepared the ground for a takeover. When Queen Liliuokalani ascended to the throne, she attempted to rescue political power back to native Hawaiians. Hawaiians wanted their sovereignty respect after years of political interference by American businessmen, but her push for a new constitution threatened the sugar barons' control and their profits. That was the moment they decided to remove her. And in 1893, the coup began. American businessmen formed something they called the Committee of Safety. It sounds harmless, but it was essentially a cop group. They claimed they felt threatened even though they had the backing of American wealth and military connections. They requested help from the United States, and the U.S. Marines landed in Honolulu. This wasn't a peaceful intervention. This was a show of force. Queen Liliuokalani was surrounded, outnumbered, and pressured at gunpoint. She was forced to yield her authority to the United States, not because she believed the takeover was legal, but because she wanted to avoid bloodshed for her people. She made it clear that she was yielding temporarily, trusting that the American government, once informed of the illegal coup, would restore her to power. But that restoration never came. Instead, the sugar barons established a fake provisional government, a government nobody voted for, and one that had zero legal legitimacy. They declared themselves in charge. Imagine foreigners overthrowing the US government and then calling themselves the provisional leaders of America. That is exactly what happened in Halloween. But the story gets even worse. Native Hawaiians resisted immediately. Over 38,000 Hawaiians signed petitions demanding the US stop assassination. For perspective, that was nearly the entire native Hawaiian population at that time. This was not a silent takeover. Hawaiians loudly and clearly said no. Queen Lily Okanali wrote letters, petitions, and appeals to U.S. leadership. She begged Washington to reverse the coup. She spoke about illegal acts, stolen sovereignty, and the harm being done to her people. She trusted the American government to uphold justice. But America didn't care. The sugar industry was too profitable, per Harbon was too strategic, and expansionism was too tempting. The US wanted her win, and by then they had already taken it by force. Then in 1898, during the Spanish-American War, the US saw an opportunity. They legally annexed her win not through a treaty, because they didn't have the vote, but through a joint resolution. A resolution that had no authority under the international law to seize another nation's territory. That as a nation has been debated for scholars, activists, and legal experts for decades, because by the standards of international law, Hawaiian was never lawfully as annexed. It was occupied and the people living there knew it. But the US didn't stop at political takeover. They moved on to cultural suppression. The Hawaiian language was banned in schools. Let that sink in. Children were punished for speaking the only language their ancestors knew. Hawaiian spirituality, traditions, and cultural practice were shamed or outlawed. Sacred land were seized and sold. Families were separated. Historically, sites were destroyed or paved over. Everything that made Hawaiian was treated as disposable except when it was useful for marketing to tourists. The Hawaiian identity was not just attacked, it was systematically erased, and eventually Hawaii was repackaged, not as a sovereign nation, not as a stolen kingdom, not as a victim of colonization, but as a paradise, a vacation spot, a place where mainland Americans could escape their stress. A place where the culture was exotic enough to entertain tourists but diluted enough to feel safe and sellable. The sovereignty of an entire nation was replaced with a brand. But here is where model tension comes in. Today, the tourism industry in Hawaii brings billions of dollars every year, but native Hawaiians see almost none of it. Tourism money goes to resort owners, hotel chains, developers, airlines, and corporations, but not the community. If tourism truly happened Hawaiians, why are Hawaiian-owned hotels almost non-existent? Why are native Hawaiian families pushed into poverty? Why is the media price of a single family home around $1 million? Why are local businesses closing while luxury resorts expand? Tourism thrives, but Hawaiians struggle. It's not paradise for the people who live there, it is survival. Now imagine what it's like to live in a place where 20,000 tourists arrive every single day, where there are 7 tourists for every resident, where people who do not understand the culture, the language, the land, the history, or the trauma show up and treat Hawaii like Disneyland. Imagine dealing with tourists who trespass on sacred lands, walk into dangerous beaches, ignoring warning signs, disrespect cultural traditions, assume everything is for their entertainment, and expect locals to smile endlessly in the name of hospitality. The patience of native Hawaiians is not low because they hate visitors. It is low because they are tired. Tired of being ignored, tired of being priced out, tired of being disrespected, tired of watching their sacred places turn into tourist attraction, tired of the narrative that they exist to serve outsiders. So when tourists say the locals were rude to me, what they often mean is the Hawaiians didn't treat me like royalty. They failed to understand the centuries of exploitation, the ongoing injustice, and the emotional exhaustion Hawaiians carried. When people say the locals are unwelcoming, they ignore the context, they ignore the history, they ignore the harm, and they ignore the fact that Hawaiians have every right to protect their land, their culture, and their dignity. This is not negativity, this is a survival. When someone says if Hawaiians don't like tourists, why don't they leave? The irony is unbearable. This is their home. This is their land. This is their nation. They shouldn't have to live anywhere. The people who should leave or at least stop acting entitled are the ones who show up without learning a single thing about the Hawaiian beyond beaches and snorkeling. And that brings us to the present. Hawaiians continue to fight for their rights, land rights, language rights, cultural rights, and historical recognition. The movement for Hawaiian sovereignty is not a fragile idea. It is a response to the trauma of forced assassination, cultural suppression, and economic displacement. Activists, scholars, and cultural leaders have been calling out the truth for decades. Hawaiian was stolen, its assassination was illegal, its people were silenced, and the effects of that theft are still felt today.
So, lovies, if you have watched up to this extent, thank you so much for all the love and support. Please leave your own thought in the comment section of what you think, and I will see you, lovies, when I upload the next one.